Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, November 27th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, I do want to sit there and say we are a family-friendly podcast. We try to watch your language. Sometimes words do fly. And, of course, there may be things that may be shown that may be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, I know for a lot of us, we're all still recovering from Turkey. As a lot of people don't like to say Happy Thanksgiving, so I've come up with a new term for Thanksgiving, for Thanksgiving Day. You know what I call it? Here it goes: Happy Native American Welcoming Illegal Immigrants Day. It's a mouthful, but I'm still working on it. That also being said, guys, I do want to go ahead and actually cover some information that's already been covered, because news like this, when it comes down to it, it just needs to be repeated again.
Each one of these verdict forms separately. First verdict form I have is the state of Georgia versus Travis McMichael. Mr. McMichael, please stand. Verdict is as follows. In the Superior Court of Glenn County, state of Georgia, the state of Georgia versus Travis McMichael, case number CR 000433. Jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Travis McMichael, guilty. I'm going to ask that whoever just made an outburst be removed from the court, please.
I don't know about y'all, but there's just no other way I can explain that. But yes, I can understand though. If you don't understand the reason why he wooed, you've been missing out a lot. For all those that have been paying attention to the Ahmaud Arbery case, yes, that was from this past Wednesday, in which all three men were found guilty of murdering Ahmaud Arbery. Now, again, as I said on the midweek review, you can understand why that man wooed. I can understand why that man wooed. I can understand why a lot of black people and some non-black people finally breathe a sigh of relief. Finally could waiting to exhale. I don't mean to make it sound like that, but that's what it was. It was waiting to exhale. That all three men were found guilty. And again, it needed to happen. But as I said in the midweek review, guys, it needed to happen just because the simple fact of the matter, the overwhelming evidence, the fact of the matter that they had no reason to chase this man, and that their defense was placing a citizen's arrest when the boy did nothing wrong. That being said, it just needed to happen. Now, there are some parallels to this, because even though I said on the weekend review that there are some parallels to this case in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and I said specifically the jury. Both juries had at least 90% white people, and on both those juries, only one person of color. And again, I felt because Rittenhouse's case was with a biased judge and them throwing out evidence and them throwing out weapon charges, and at the same time, the fact that they're considering he was the self-defense the self-defense angle was enough outside the obvious reason that this young man illegally possessed a firearm in Kenosha, Washington. His mom drove him to a place where he did not live, and someone purchased a firearm for him to where he can go and protect businesses and be a medic when you're the only armed person at a protest. So, with the fact that the jury acquitted him of all charges, a lot of people can see why, when it comes to those three men and Ahmaud Arbery, that yes, I said it because I was saying it because I'm pretty sure it's true. A lot of us had this in the back of our minds. These three could possibly walk. And to now see that they will not be walking, that more than likely they may all be facing life in prison. I will say this because I still say the justice system is broken. Because a lot of people are sitting there saying, well, the justice system works. A broken clock is right twice a day. The thing about it is, I also showed on the midweek review that a lot of people, the Groveland 4 being exonerated, two men one was accused of murder, one was accused of rape. Both of them were exonerated because they went back and reviewed the cases. They went back and reviewed the evidence. So, forgive me when people say the justice system works. It doesn't work. Because if there's all these men who have been accused of doing something they did not do, and decades go by, only for them to come back and sit there and say, we're sorry, but their lives, their families' lives, if they have kids, their lives are forever affected. So, miss me with the BS if you sit there and tell me that the American justice system is working. No, the American justice system is a broken clock. You might get one or two right, but how many of the other ones have you missed that are still somewhere, either sitting in the history books, sitting currently in prison, or forever tainted because somebody, prosecution, law enforcement, or however you see it, didn't do their job. So again, I am happy. Do not get me wrong. I am happy that the men are facing justice. And the men will be facing this, and they're also facing other federal charges that are coming up. So additional time may come, but more than likely, those three men will be seeing life in prison. And again, I am all for it because it needs to happen. That being said, guys, that's the reason why I sit there and I'm hammering on this is because a lot of people are saying the American justice system works. Even Joe Biden had sat there and said, well, the jury did its job. Which, to a certain extent, it's the safest statement you can give. Sure, the jury did its job. You ask the jury to review evidence and go along with the judge's instructions on looking at every charge that's been leveled at him. And of course the jury did its job. But again, historically, we have seen where the jury didn't get it right. And we've seen where the opposition, say if a person of color was being accused of a crime and he's facing an all-white jury, I'm just saying, it's a little bit different because keep in mind, they also, in the Ahmaud Arbery case, tried to claim mistrial saying the jury's been tainted, which I don't get because if you were really doing a jury of his own peers, it would be a jury of all black people looking at three white men that are being accused. But if they did that, guess who would be screaming racist? You already know. So, again, we'll follow that story because, again, guys, there's still a few more charges that still need to be sorted out. But yes, those three men will be looking at life in prison. And again, broken clock is right twice a day. But again, the American justice system needs a serious retooling. That, above all else, is true. That being said, guys, we want to move forward with this because, again, this is why I say I don't get. Two cases right now. Because the Republicans are going to have a little bit of an issue going into the midterms next year. Because to me, Kevin McCarthy of all people, the House Minority Leader, you would think by now he would be ready to get rid of a few that are literally going to cause him headaches. One of them being someone who can't help but make jokes about Muslims, even one directed at a Democratic representative. I cannot make this up.
Otto is now apologizing for her racist, anti-Muslim comments about another member of Congress. Bobart had suggested that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who is a Democrat and a Muslim, might be a suicide bomber.
I was getting into an elevator with one of my staffers, and he and I we're leaving the Capitol, we're going back to my office, and we get in the elevator, and I see a Capitol police officer running hurriedly to the elevator. I see Frack all over his face. I look to my left, and there she is, Ilhan Omar. Whoops. And I said, well, she doesn't have a backpack, we should be fine. So we only had one floor to go, and I was like, do I say it or not? I looked over, and I said, oh, look, the Jihad Squad decided to show up for work today.
Well, Congresswoman Bobart has now apologized via Twitter, writing, I apologize to anyone in the Muslim community I offended with my comment about Representative Omar. I have reached out to her office to speak with her directly. There are plenty of policy differences to focus on without this unnecessary distraction. CNN's Lauren Fox.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second. Lauren Boettcher, who in my mind is just Sarah Palin light, has sat there and made some ill repute comments about Democratic Representative Ilhan Omar. Pretty much simple fact of the matter, she's trying to sit there and say, well, she doesn't have a backpack on, so we're okay. She says it to a group of her constituents. Keep in mind, there's nothing wrong about the Muslim community. The Muslim community, like many communities out there, are some of the friendliest, nicest people out there you can meet. And yes, there are a few of them that are, and they're always being stereotyped because of the actions of a few extremists. That being said, it is amazing to me that she's just actually pandering to her base, which her base is full of bigots, racists, xenophobes, misogynistics, and xenophobes. Not surprising, but amazing enough that she turns around and sits there and says, oh, well, I apologize. I'm sorry for my comments. If I offend, I apologize. I did not mean to offend the Muslim community. I have reached out to Ilhan Omar's office trying to speak with her. No. This is what I say, and these are the people with Lauren Boettcher. These are the people who are currently in office that are policymakers, lawmakers, policymakers. These are the people that tell you off the bat that you don't want them, but yet they somehow got voted in. And again, you would think for a statement like that, it's like, oh no, we know. Don't joke. It's funny it's always funny when I sit there and hear people go, oh, I didn't mean those comments. No, mean what you say. Because that's the true honest. You're just being completely honest. So mean what you say. I'm going to sit there and be like, well, we definitely know how you feel because that's how your constituents feel. It's the reason why Donald Trump was able to win the presidency, was able to win not only the nomination, but the presidency so easily. He tapped into the hatred of idiots. And yes, I still sit there and say if you voted for Donald Trump, you are an idiot because, well, I'll put it this way, that's a little bit on the small side. Either you're rich, a corporation, or you're an idiot because only rich people and corporations benefited from Trump's administration. If you were an idiot that thought your life was going to be better under a con man, then he's done his job. But the point I'm making out of all this is, again, you would think this would be an easy slam dunk for Kevin McCarthy to go, we don't tolerate this. The Republican Party is, the usual PR BS. We're not xenophobes, we're not racists, we're not bigots. You would think he would come out and sit there and say, we have a zero tolerance. I'm going to bring this up in the House to have her removed from Congress. But yet he's silent. He's still silent. And even another person who still in my mind is the one person in Congress right now who has, she's basically got a job for doing nothing. Think about this for a second. And I'm talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. This woman was stripped of her congressional committee responsibilities and budget meetings. She is literally, and I mean this ever so nicely, she just shows up and gets paid for it. The Republican way. But then, there was also, because she also went to Matt Gaetz' podcast and decided to call out Kevin McCarthy, which again tells you the current status of the Republican Party.
Only a year away from a potential race for GOP speaker, and we're already seeing some of these Trump allies flex their muscles in Congress. Just take a listen to what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say on an episode of Matt Gaetz' podcast yesterday.
We know that Kevin McCarthy has a problem in our conference. He doesn't have the full support to be speaker. He doesn't have the votes that are there because there's many of us that are very unhappy about the failure to hold Republicans accountable while conservatives like me, Paul Gosar, and many others just constantly take the abuse by the Democrats. I've demanded it. I want Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney kicked out of the GOP conference.
Do you respect the Republican leadership right now?
No, I don't respect them at all. I can't respect leadership that doesn't hold people accountable.
So specifically, Green wants Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney kicked out of the House Republican Conference. And she also wants to see the 13 House Republicans who voted for the bipartisan infrastructure bill to lose their committee assignments. These are demands that so far Kevin McCarthy has resisted. And that's because he also needs to win the majority. And that includes protecting some of his moderates who did vote for the infrastructure bill. So all of this really just is an early preview of the challenges and the potential math problem facing Kevin McCarthy in his quest for the Speaker's gavel.
Again, and we wonder why he's quiet. We wonder why Kevin McCarthy's quiet. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has said numerous things,
Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boettcher of Colorado is now apologizing for her racist and...
Thank you, CNN, for repeating the same thing I already talked about. But anyway, what I was going to say. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for the simple fact of the matter, this woman has made numerous comments. She has offended multiple people, including people of color. She has literally and figuratively not worn the mask mandate and has been fined. I mean, I think she's well over 60 grand by now. And at the same time, McCarthy could have had her kicked out of Congress. Really could have. He by now could have had her kicked out of Congress. He by now could have actually brought it up and sent her back to whatever QAnon hole she came out of. He could have done that. Why hasn't he? The same reason why Lauren Boettcher, or I call her Sarah Palin Light, will still keep her job. The one thing about Republicans is, keep in mind, this is the midterms, and the Republican Party, as much as I sit there and I used to say they protect their own, McCarthy's gonna have a little bit of a problem. Why? Because now the Republican Party has too many Donald Trump radicals in there. And again, Donald Trump is the invisible hand in the Republican Party. Don't think for 1 second he's not trying to draw out his multiple lawsuits. Don't think he's not going to try to draw out the January 6th Commission getting a hold of his documents like he thinks he can still assert executive privilege, but it doesn't work for ex-presidents. You cannot exert executive privilege anymore because you're no longer a president. You're a private citizen now. Keep in mind, he's trying to stretch it out here. Reason being, guys, is because, for the simple fact of the matter, 2024 is still coming. He still thinks that he has a shot. He still thinks that, above all else, he's got the nomination again. And you know the messed up part about all this is, he's actually right. Because nobody in the Republican Party is going to run against Trump. We've seen what happens. We've seen what happens when people try to run against Trump. We've seen what happens. Liz Cheney voted for impeachment. Liz Cheney was kicked out of the Republican leadership and was also kicked out of the Wyoming Congress because of that single decision. And we've seen folks that have voted for Trump's impeachment that are no longer running for election. They're no longer running for re-election. Why? Because it'll be brought up against them that they voted against Trump. You went against the king, and that's what it is. The current Republican leadership is non-acting because they're voting against everything Democrats are doing. At the same time, they're waiting for Trump to come back because, for all his intents of being a con man, he does get crowds. Still gets crowds, surprisingly. And Kevin McCarthy is not going to do anything because he's trying to keep his job. He could have gotten rid of Lauren Boettcher. He could have got rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene. But now you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's literally going around like she has all the time in the world, because she does. And it's pretty much saying Kevin McCarthy needs to go. The folks that voted for that infrastructure needs to go because she called it communism, which again tells you everything you want to know. And at the same time, she wants those that voted to impeach out Donald Trump. You know what that's pretty much saying, ladies and gentlemen? What that pretty much saying is, let's take out the regime that's going to be a problem. And that's what it is. Let's take out those, and in place of the regime, who's going to do our bidding? The problem is the political parties, they're not regimes. They're not. Donald Trump is not Donald Trump is not the would-be president in his mind. He thinks everybody loves him. He romanticizes the idea of being a dictator so much, but he wants to be a dictator that everybody loves, which again is an oxymoron. But again, this is the reason why Kevin McCarthy's silent, because if I was him, I would go ahead and get rid of the most problematic people in Congress, because even though I sat there and said in 2022 it's going to be a fight for the midterms, the Democrats will already have a hard time, because look at the time they spent on passing two of the biggest bills that should have been passed literally within days of all the Democrats having a majority in the office, having a majority in Congress. Those two bills should have been passed. And I'm talking about the House Infrastructure Plan, which eventually did get passed, but the Build Back Better plan, which again had a price tag at one time from 3.5 trillion to like 2.7, then 1.9. I think it settled on 1.9 or 1.7 trillion. Look how long it took because of two people. Two senators, Manchin and Sinema, had a problem with the bill. Manchin, because the bill is too much spending, even though he comes from a state where the EPA wouldn't look too fondly on him, because he literally has holdings in coal companies, especially where his son runs, and he literally sits on the board, but has an issue with the New Deal. I wonder why. He's a walking conflict of interest. Sinema has even been quoted by Joe Biden to sit there and say, well, Sinema doesn't want to see taxes raised on rich people and corporations. Kind of tells you where she's at in life. So of course she's not going to do anything to help the people. So again, these two idiots are holding up progressive moves. And again, this is why I'm going to have a hard time with Democrats. I'm like, you guys are going to have the hardest time in the midterms, because you're taking forever today to pass two bills. You have two people in the Senate who more than likely, because Manchin is pretty much in Trump territory, is going to try to remain as Republican as humanly possible. And then the other side of things, you have, Sinema, who most of our constituents are like, what are you doing? This is not what we voted you in there for. And when it comes to the midterm, guys, at this point, you, above all else, Democrats cannot afford to lose the House or the Senate. They cannot afford to. But that's the Republicans' goal. The Republicans' goal for this midterms is disruption. They are trying above all else to sit there and go, we can if we get the House or we get the Senate. If we can get one of those two, we basically disrupt. We basically have a lame duck Congress. We can basically put Congress at a standstill, because if we get the Senate, cool, that means they gotta go through us. If we get the House, cool, that means they gotta go through us. If they can get a majority in either of those two areas, they've mission accomplished. For the last 2 years of Biden's presidency, you will have a harder time trying to get stuff passed, because Republicans can now successfully block everything. Which again, this is the reason why Democrats should have gotten rid of the filibuster a long time ago. Should have, to get stuff passed. But again, I'm not surprised by that. Although what I am surprised about, guys, just to switch gears for a second, that again, the public service loan forgiveness, which is basically for those whose loans are forgiven after multiple payments or working in the public sector, has nearly added 30,000 more borrowers have been added to that under new rules, in which that there are about 30,000 people whose student loans have been forgiven because they are working in government and nonprofit sectors. Now, again, I got no issue with this. I have been saying this for the longest time about student loans, that it's high time we now invest in the American people. How do we invest in the American people? We take off this monumental chunk of debt off their shoulders. Because here's my argument. You bailed out banks. Banks get bailed out all the time. Banks literally play with house money like an addict at a casino. And when they run out of money, guess what they go to? Congress. Corporations have went to Congress saying we need money, otherwise things will not happen, people lose jobs, we'll have to fold up shop. Industries. Remember the car industry? Remember the three biggest auto names went up to Congress and said we need to be bailed out? We need to be bailed out, otherwise all these jobs and things of that nature will be lost. So here's my thing. If billion-dollar industries, the auto industry, the airline industry, the banking industry, can all go to Congress and get bailed out through the bad decisions, why when the American people, well, again, because a lot of us were in that same track. Once you're out of high school, if you want a good job, go to college. You go to college, get graduated, get a bachelor's, get a master's, get a PhD, get a great job, and then, have a better quality of life. We've all fell for the lie. I mean, it didn't always used to be true. It didn't always used to be a lie, because that's what it used to be. It used to be that people went to college for a higher education, for a chance at a better life and a higher paycheck, in a career. That's what it used to be. However, in this day and age, the pandemic has shifted the way a lot of businesses, a lot of jobs, and things of that nature do differently. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of great areas out there. Me being IT, I've always said it best, that coding, that cloud implementation, that app development is going to be, and security are going to be the new just 4 out of the many areas that folks can go into and still have successful careers. But for a lot of people, they thought that they could go ahead and get their dream degree and be college graduates, and realize that they're still not making more. They're still not making more than the average person that just has a high school education. So again, also with student debt though, because again, banks love to do that. Banks will sit there, and I still sit there and say to this day, banks will give you a student loan, will give you a loan for education, and charge you an enormous APR fee in the hopes that you get a good enough job to pay it back, versus giving you a loan that you might do for a business that they willingly deny you on. So a bank will give you a loan for student debt for college, knowing full well that student loan will be attached to you until you pay it off or until you pass on, because there's 2 things that are certain in life: it's death and taxes. But they won't give you a loan if you're trying to build a business. Now, with that also being said, student debt prevents people from buying houses, from buying houses, vehicles, things of that nature, because it's literally a debt cycle. And a lot of people who thought about going to college at one point decide above all else, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to take on debt. Not the fact that they can't find their degrees or things of that nature. The whole time in their mind is like, I don't know if I want to take on debt. Take on debt for the rest of my life. And again, this is the argument that I make about student loan forgiveness. On top of that, we've seen how much we pay out these industries to bail them out. Currently, I think the student loan debt is at 1.7 trillion and counting. So here's my thing, and I keep saying this until someone can show me a validated reason why we shouldn't. I think all student loans need to be paid off, because you know why? People's credit profiles increase. People actually can breathe a little bit easier, because some people do have 40, 50, 90, even $200,000 of student debt. It gets pretty freaking high. As you go up in education, it goes pretty freaking high. So there's nothing. I mean, if you think about it, student loan debt forgiveness is possible for all, not just for those working in the government and private sector. I'm talking about for everybody who just simply wants to have this chunk of debt off their shoulders. It is possible. It is doable. And it's one of those things that it's a progressive thing, because Bernie Sanders has asked for it, Elizabeth Warren has asked for it. I've yet to see good old centrist Joe say something about it. And again, that's going to come up because centrist Joe has said a lot, including increasing the minimum wage, which again still needs to be increased. The minimum wage needs to be increased to at least $23. Reason being, because everything's going up but your paycheck. And that is very much well true. But speaking of things that are true, guys, unfortunately, like I say with viruses and stocks have a lot in common, especially the fact of the matter is that the Resident Evil of pandemics, and I'm talking the COVID pandemic, has a new variant. And I know it's messed up not to bring in the Marvel Loki reference, but yes, there is a new variant, and yes, it is affecting the stock market.
potentially even more contagious variant of the coronavirus. The discovery comes from Africa, triggering a flood of countries to suspend travel from about half a dozen southern African nations. The UK was one of the first countries to initiate a travel ban, followed quickly by the 27-nation European Union, moving to contain the variant, taking no chances before it spreads around the world. The ripple effect has been swift, with emergency meetings of health officials and the stock market plunging. The Dow down 800 points at the open. 900 now. The World Health Organization, meanwhile, is urging caution on travel bans, and U.S. health officials say while a ban is possible, it is too soon to know.
Well, I mean, obviously, as soon as we find out more information, we'll make a decision as quickly as we possibly can. You always put these things on the table, but you don't want to say you're going to do it until you have some scientific reason to do it. That's the reason why we're rushing now to get that scientific data to try and make an informed decision about something like that. You're prepared to do everything you need to do to protect the American public, but you want to make sure there's a basis for doing that, and that's what we're doing right now.
Joining me now is NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez in Tel Aviv, NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman, who is with President Biden in Nantucket, MSNBC medical contributor Dr. Erwin Redlener, and Politico chief economic correspondent Ben White. Everybody, welcome and thank you for being here. So, Raf, you're in Israel. The first cases were found outside of Africa in Israel and in Hong Kong and Belgium. I know Tel Aviv and Israel is shutting down travel from South Africa. What else is happening there?
Yeah, Katie, Israel's government is moving more aggressively than any other so far. They are stopping travel from pretty much every country in Africa, with only a handful of exceptions. This comes after one confirmed case, two suspected cases of that new variant. The confirmed case in a traveler who returned recently from Malawi. Now, all three of those people are in isolation, but the Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is preparing the public here for further spread. He is telling people that Israel is at the threshold of an emergency situation. We've seen similarly the UK and the European Union moving to restrict travel slightly less drastically, but from South Africa and from 5 other southern African nations. We've seen other travel restrictions coming into place in Japan, in Singapore so far. As you heard from Dr. Fauci, there's no indication yet that the U.S. is planning to bring in a similar travel ban. And there is some debate among medical professionals in Israel and around the world about whether these travel bans actually work to stop the variant spreading, whether they serve a medical purpose, or if it's more about the government being seen to do something in the face of an alarming new variant like this one emerging. Okay.
So, first and foremost, don't panic. I know we just got told there's another variant. I understand it. I get it. The first thing I want to say, above all else, please don't panic. Because again, this is what I think this is now the 3rd variant that is that's been reported. But what I do like, the positive that I take from this about this pandemic, about how the pandemic response so far. What I do like, for some fact of the matter, is that countries are moving forward and locking down. We've seen it happen in New Zealand. New Zealand should be the blueprint on how to do this. They locked down their country. They had stay-at-home orders. They heavily restricted travel, and at the same time, they had quarantine conditions for those that had arrived. And again, as you can virtually see, they literally eliminated. They eliminated their COVID cases almost to the point to where they were back out, barbecuing, no masks, social distancing rules were suspended. And I always thought that was the greatest thing. Now, again, I understand. Folks hear that, they go, we don't want to be locked down again. We don't want to stay at home. We don't want to do this. We miss all this. I understand. But this is the way we combat these things. Well, number one of 2 ways we combat these things, because one, we do need to have lockdowns. We do need to restrict travel to certain locations to limit virus exposure. And get vaccinated. And I have been saying that, and I will not stop saying that, because again, imagine if everyone literally followed the same instructions got vaccinated, got their boosters wherever you can. If you are eligible to get boosters, because again, please look into that, because some people need to really check in that, especially if you're immunocompromised or if you're allergic to some items. Please check with your physician before actually getting the booster, and also at the same time, don't follow people. How can I put this ever so nicely? Don't follow anybody that's not a medical professional. I don't mean to go into a rant, but that's always bugged me. More people will listen to Joe Rogan and Aaron Rodgers before they go listen to a doctor who's been doing this for a number of years, or listen to a research scientist or other medical personnel. But you go listen to a guy who literally and figuratively didn't get vaccinated. I will never understand that. But again, that's how we're going to beat this, guys, is vaccinated and booster. I got vaccinated and also got my booster because, again, I trust the science. I trust the people who literally who have been trained and skilled to tell me otherwise. But again, yes, does it suck? Yes, it sucks. I still want to travel. There's still places in this world I still want to see. I still want to be able to see Athens. I still want to be able to see Japan. I still want to be able to see to go see a beach, go see like places like Bora Bora or even Hawaii. I'll even take Hawaii, even though the flight is gonna be a pain in the butt. But I'll still take flights because again, I want to still be able to see some wonderful things of this planet. But I also know that until we all do our part, this is going to become the norm. And if you guys don't know basic virology, yes, there's going to be variants. There's going to be some evolution, because viruses are just like us. Viruses are no different on a one cell variant, except the simple fact of the matter is we're just bigger. But they evolve. They become variant. They have variants. They evolve, things of that nature. But how we beat this pandemic, however, is that it's got to be on two fronts. So I'm not knocking the countries out there locking down or barring travel from certain areas, just because again they're trying to curb cases. As the U.S. is still waiting to see if we have our first variant case in there. But again, guys, the one thing I'll say about this is still, if you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated already. And if you're still wear a mask. I still wear a mask. People may look at me funny, but guess what? I haven't caught COVID. People may look at you funny because you're the only one that's got a mask on, and you're one of the very few people that have a mask in the store. But guess what? I haven't caught COVID. I haven't been down. I haven't been this, that, nature, because you know why? Precautions work. Protections work. It's not that freaking hard. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this story as well, just because yesterday was Black Friday, and people, I'm trying my hardest to understand Black Friday, because as I get older in life, I have a hard time understanding that after Happy Native Americans Welcoming Legal Immigrants Day, I'm gonna start saying it. I'm gonna use that for Thanksgiving. Happy Native Americans Welcoming Legal Immigrants Day. It might fly where somebody says, but they'll get it. But again, after this day has happened, you had food, you guys have rested, probably watched a couple of crappy football games, even though the Raiders and Cowboys game was actually pretty good this time around. But I digress. But folks still want to get up and go to these stores and retail stores and shop for deals that you're gonna wind up getting on New Year's anyway. But because it's Christmas and this whole thing of having presents on the table and getting the perfect gift for someone, I don't understand it. Especially when you have stuff like this going on.
Tonight, popular California malls with their guard up as a rash of organized crime plagues high-end stores during the holiday season. Police are calling them flash mob thefts, when a group of thieves, sometimes in the dozens, surge into a store, grab items before fleeing in getaway cars. This is Walnut Creek, California last weekend. A shocking 80 people in and out of Nordstrom within a minute.
And like ski masks, crowbars, a bunch of weapons.
Even mom and pop shops falling victim in nearby Oakland.
This one is it's really going to set us back.
A similar scene outside of Chicago, more than a dozen storming a Louis Vuitton store, weaving between frightened customers to snag merchandise. Los Angeles police responding to 3 incidents this week.
I have no empathy, no sympathy for these kind of criminal gangs and elements.
Organized retail theft costing businesses and consumers big. One trade group estimating nearly $69 billion worth of products were stolen in 2019.
The sheer volume of it is something that's really unprecedented.
District Attorney Vern Pearson among the growing voices criticizing a 2014 move to downgrade thefts under $950 from a felony to a misdemeanor in California.
If you've convinced enough people that there will be no consequences for their actions, this is what happens.
In San Francisco, 9 face felony charges and at least 3 in LA arrested. Still, shoppers on edge as brazen crime taints the season of giving. Emily Ikeda, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Now, of course, there was various reports across the country where there was even a few shootings in malls, and I always thought to myself, because again, the one thing about this, because again, it's happening in San Francisco and a few other areas, that they try to sit there and say, well, in San Francisco, the guy tries to say, well, they lowered the crime of theft of a certain amount from a felony to a misdemeanor. No, sir, that I disagree, because that doesn't, for lack of better words, that does not encourage crime. If anything, for the simple fact of the matter, it's the fact that these are areas, and I use this for an example. I said pandemic areas have lesser staff, security is lax, especially in these high-profile areas, because again, a lot of people don't consider that no one is going to try to rob a Nordstrom or a Louis Vuitton store. Keep in mind the what was it? Was it Gucci or Louis Vuitton store in Atlanta? That place got raided in Atlanta of all places, because let's be honest, for most people, Atlanta is seen as the mecca of the black mecca of Georgia. So I want to say it was Louis Vuitton. I could be wrong. I need to look that up. I'm pretty sure. Well, a high fashion brand store in Atlanta Mall did get raided. So again, I point this out, the fact that it's not the fact of, lower penalties for these folks equals more crime. Because here's the thing, you want to know where crime happens? Crime happens in one of two places. It'll happen in the least likely place, and it will also happen in a place where it's devoid of opportunities, financial and educational, and of course at the same time security. Because once you take away all those things in the neighborhood, what do you think is going to happen next? Crime is going to escalate. But again, with the one thing that's happened with these stores, these smash and grab stores, it is orchestrated, it is planned out, because now the reality of it all is that it's not just the so-called quote unquote urban areas that have the crime. It's the male areas as well. Nordstrom got hit, Louis Vuitton got hit. Why? Because no one ever considered that a group of people just come in there bum rushing, take everything, and then leave. No one has sat there and said otherwise. But now we're seeing the reality that they are no longer, I won't say protected, but I will say they are no longer not above the pale. That yes, this will happen. And again, that kind of went through my mind on Black Friday, because I was like, I'm not saying that'll happen in certain areas, because again, if you've been to a mall, like I said, I'm in the home state of Tennessee, so for the simple fact of the matter, I know security is beefed up, especially in the mall, especially here in Opry Mills, where there was a shooting. And trust me, they beefed the crap out of that mall to the point to where they've even sat there and put in a juvenile rule that after a certain time, juveniles can no longer be in the mall unless accompanied by an adult. So yes, they are making standards and things of that nature. But yes, we do need to acknowledge the fact that yes, not just the heavily foot traffic stores, but even the high fashion brands are no longer safe now. But how do we fix that? We stop underestimating that crime only happens in one spot. Once you stop underestimating it, then you can start moving forward. But I would not be surprised if their answer to this is like up in the crime bill, just like they did back in 1994 when Democrats and Republicans both voted for it. There was just not one no equal side. But moving right along, guys, I did want to cover these last two stories before we get to our feel good segment. I love the fact that I keep saying about, about food as though as I get older and trying to watch what I eat and try to be healthier, that, this has been talked about a lot, that there are food deserts out there in America. Now, what is a food desert? A food desert is basically, guys, when people do not have access to healthier options, to fruits and vegetables, things of that nature. All they usually have is convenience stores filled with junk food, sodas, fast food restaurants, things of that nature, to where they are detrimentally not healthy to human beings. But there are some people that are trying to change that, and again, this is the reason why I like this story.
Lean protein, the building blocks of a healthy diet, but far too many Americans don't have access and can't afford them. In Milwaukee, they have come up with a rolling solution.
It's the only way I can shop. I can't afford anything else.
The Hunger Task Force partnering with Piggly Wiggly to bring healthy, affordable foods to so-called food deserts.
The people who are most impacted by food deserts are more likely to be people of color, low-income people, seniors, and people with disabilities.
The mobile market makes stops around the city with savings of 25% or more. Streets here are filled with fast food chains and few supermarkets.
More than a third of the neighborhoods in Milwaukee don't have access to quality fresh food, and that's because in a lot of places, the small local grocery stores are out of business. And with the pandemic, that situation has only gotten worse.
Sheila Cruz is a mom of 2 young daughters.
How much would you say is your budget for food a week?
A week, I try to stay under 100, which sometimes it's not enough.
Healthy food often feels like a luxury she can't afford.
On the weeks where you can go and visit the mobile market, how much easier is that?
Oh, it's way easier. I got a lot of fruit, veggies. I got like a couple of packages of meat, and I stayed under $20.
Nearly 20 million Americans live in low-income areas without accessible grocery stores. The mobile markets in Milwaukee could be a model for the country.
I don't think as a country we understand that this is a public health crisis, and bringing fresh food to neighborhoods in need is something that is imperative for all of us.
Perhaps the best way to get the food to those who need it,
I got some bananas, pomegranates, and avocados,
is to put the food on wheels. Stephanie Gosk, NBC.
And I dig that. I mean, I keep saying that there are many food deserts out there, and I like the idea of that. Having a mobile market to where you can actually bring fresh produce, fresh produce to others, and I dig that. It is a great idea because, again, aside from growing your own garden, I always say it best: if you have the space, or if you have a little bit of space, you can always do a small garden inside of an apartment, or if you have a large space or a backyard, you can always do your own garden. Aside from growing your own food, which again I'm a big fan of. I am a big supporter of growing your own food, growing your own fruits and vegetables, or at least getting a community garden together to where everybody can enjoy it. Still love that idea, but I love this idea of the mobile market where they can actually bring fresh produce, because people don't understand. Because a guy who works out like me, I can tell you off the bat, trying to eat healthy is expensive. There is a reason why you can go. There's a reason why you can take $5 and go to any fast food place and get like 3 burgers, which still doesn't make any sense to me. You can take $5 and go to any fast food joint and get 3 burgers. Which, don't get me wrong, I am a burger fan. I love burgers, but I also know I can't have them all the time. I cannot, above all else, have them all the time. I used to in my 20s. Oh man, I used to be terrible in my 20s, but in my 30s, it's like, okay, I have to start watching what I eat. I have my cheat days. I have my cheat days. I have my one cheat day, Saturday, to where I will have a burger. I may have a burger and have fries and be content. But with that being said, guys, I've said it before, $5 each to 3 cheeseburgers. Have you tried buying vegetables in a grocery store? Buying apples, oranges, pears, grapes, squats, pineapples, things of that nature. Have you seen the prices on those? Don't get me wrong, yes, because of the food supply chains, prices have gone up, but before there was logistical issues, food itself, healthier food, was definitely higher. And again, that presents a problem. But that's the reason why a lot of people are trying to do their best to feed themselves, and especially if they have kids, Because, again, the food deserts are real. And how we combat them, like I said before, I mean, I like the idea of a mobile market van which can bring fresh fruits. I like the idea that a lot of people, if you still have a backyard, because most houses these days are being bought up and apartment properties are being built up by the second. But if you have space, I highly recommend to grow a garden. Just because the simple fact of the matter is, it will benefit you in the long run. That's all I'm saying. But before we do our feel good segment, one last thing I did want to talk about, just a follow-up update on one of the strikes. So keep in mind, the John Deere strike is over, as they did fill out a new agreement. But let's not forget about Kellogg, because Kellogg itself is still on strike. More than 1,000 Kellogg plant workers are still on strike, and it goes into its 7th week. There are still ongoing strikes by coal miners in Alabama. Healthcare workers in North Carolina are on strike. So again, we are still at this point of, people coming together and really taking advantage of these unions. Now, of course, there hasn't been really any movement on the Kellogg's or any of the other strikes as of yet, because again, what it comes down to is the fact of unions are holding corporations at their word. Unions work. And everybody's like, well, you got to pay union dues. Yes, that's how the union stays alive. Anybody that's in everybody in the union before knows there are union dues. There's nothing wrong with that. But what has unions gotten you? Unions basically made sure that you had time off, weekends off, because, again, Henry T. Ford started the 40-hour work week. But, again, unions made sure that you at least had 2 days off from a 40-hour work week. They also made sure that you got paid time off. They also made sure that you got sick leave. They also made sure that you were able to get insurance. All of this was done by unions. So, again, the unions right now are basically saying, hey, these people deserve better pay. These people deserve better health care, things of that nature, especially from companies that have made billion-dollar profits. Like John Deere. John Deere could pay more to its people, because the simple fact of the matter is they had a record-setting profit year of at least $30 billion. $30 billion in a profit in a pandemic year, and they still couldn't pay their workers. Now they were forced to pay their workers. So I'm not knocking those who decide to take a strike, because it needs to be done. That these companies need to be held accountable. I have no issue with that, because you guys have heard me explain you guys have heard me explain the Michael Dell story, and trust me, anybody who's ever worked for Dell or is still, I'm pretty sure they're still working for Dell, not going to say anything. But any former Dell workers know exactly what I'm talking about. But we're going to follow those strikes as they come along, as new information comes out. That being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and move over to our feel-good segment, because usually on How the Frack we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom, sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity, but hey, it's post-Native American Welcome Illegal Immigrants Day. A lot of y'all are still working on leftovers. A lot of y'all are still trying to recover. A lot of y'all are still, trying to see what's next. Since the turkey's finally over, you can finally say Christmas now. The retail stores are playing nothing but holiday music. Mariah Carey is gearing up for her annual All I Want for Christmas Is You. So, aside from that, let's actually, play some stories that are going to be uplifting, kind of restoring your faith in the humanitarian race, and leaves you on a good note. We'll start with this one as I did this week, because, again, I'm still trying to follow the story, because it itself is inspiring. And at the same time, I am hooked on this to want to know what happens at the end of this. Check this out.
After our Persons of the Week Friday night. Well, tonight, what that young team did after we said goodnight. Tonight, the California School for the Deaf Riverside, the Cubs, proving yet again they are America strong. Just one game away now from doing something their school has never done before in its 68-year history, winning the football state championship in their division. They are undefeated, and after Friday night's report, they won again, now 12-0. The players, the coaches are all deaf, winning against teams that can hear. You met them just hours before their semifinals. They signed their Hello David. Running back Eno Cernosa signing this. Deaf people can do anything. We're not the stereotype that's out there. And we were there Friday after the news. Their family, their classmates, all signing to them from the stands, the big game. And the messages we saw, we believe in you, you got this. And at running back, Enos scoring a touchdown. Afterward, he told us, we do the best that we can, we won everything we can. We can do it regardless of being deaf. Deaf communities, this is for you guys. And Coach Keith Adams, who you met here too, we watched as he signed the plays on the field after the game, telling us, we just can't hear, but we're just like everyone else. We can play. Right here tonight, Coach Adams and his players at the championship luncheon sending this post-game message. Christian Jimenez signing, we can't explain. It's amazing. We feel so inspired. We feel so honored, but it's not finished yet. One more game.
And I'm not going to lie, I've been trying to look that up. I don't know if that game has been played. I don't know if that game was played or not yet. I got to invest in this just because, the fact of the matter, guys, that, the fact that all from the players, the coaching staff, they're all deaf and yet undefeated heading into the championship game. You can't write a better Disney story than that. But I just thought that was pretty cool. If I could ever find whatever happened, because before this podcast actually started, I tried to sit there and say, oh, well, they probably didn't play the game because, again, this was Thanksgiving week, so maybe next week. But either way, I'm going to find out because I want to know whether or not they won the championship game. The next story that I got, guys, is basically, if you haven't seen this on Instagram or not, but I thought this was pretty cool. One of my favorite people, The Rock, because I try to work out like The Rock because I still want to be able to have that, that upper body that he has. But anyway, beyond the point. The Rock has basically been a very generous person, and again, this story is one of those many things that he does that he just wants to do out of the goodness out of his own heart. And again, I keep telling people, random acts of kindness do great things.
Thank you for your service, brother. Enjoy your new What the heck is happening?
There's a dude here, I read his story, and I was really impressed with his story, too. I want to highlight him. His name is Oscar Rodriguez. Where are you, Oscar?
Get out of here, bro. Get out of here, bro! Oh, my God! You do a lot of good for people, man. Yo, I can't tell you how many times I see you in this truck.
That's my baby.
You do a lot of good for people, brother.
All I can say is imagine the fact that The Rock gave you his personal truck. Of course, we all know The Rock does love to give gifts, and he does do them in a grandiose style. But I love the fact that he really does try to find people whose stories inspire and just wants to do something great for them. And again, he gave him The Rock gave you his truck. I mean, the fact you got to meet The Rock was pretty effing cool. But he gave you his truck. At that point, it's like, achievement unlocked. I'm good. Especially, I mean, get me wrong, Ford Raptors, nothing wrong with that, but a souped-up Ford Raptor 4x4, again, that used to be the rocks that he gave to you because he believes that, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, random acts of kindness. Yes, it doesn't have to be a truck. I tell people this all the time. It doesn't have to be a truck. It doesn't have to be anything except for what you believe can help out another individual, because that's how we change things. This is how we really do. This is how we change the world, through random acts of kindness. Whether it's a day, a minute, or an hour of somebody's life, if you impact them in a good way, they remember it. And that's the thing. It's not about just seeking. It's not about seeking personal achievement or putting this on social media just to give you clout. If you're good, if you're really doing kindness from the goodness out of your own heart, it shows, it's authentic, and nobody judges it, because at the same time, we want to be able to do it for others and hope that it comes back to us, because that's all it is. Call it karma, call it the golden rule, but I truly believe that whatever you put out there will come back to you in twofold. So again, just be kind. It's not that freaking hard. That also being said, guys, there is one more story that I want to talk about, and yes, it's Thanksgiving related. I keep on wanting to say Thanksgiving. Yes, it's Native Americans welcome illegal immigrants related, because this man has made for 51 years the tradition of feeding people on this day, and I thought this was pretty cool.
Last, giving credence to the belief that absence does indeed make the heart grow fonder. As millions gather round the table tonight, so much to be thankful for. The surprise reunions say it all. From Texas to Arizona. Many families coming together again for the first time since COVID initially canceled such traditions. In Springfield, Missouri, Susanna Foreman's entire family surprising her at the airport. She moved to Australia right before the pandemic, and now that restrictions are finally lifting, she was able to return home after 2 long years. And in Moline, Illinois, Bob Vogelball keeping his Thanksgiving Day tradition alive. For 51 years, he's been feeding his community, now more than 3,200 people.
I did the turkey, my mom did side dishes for a number of years.
Bob owned a small grocery store. Back in 1970, he decided to put on a Thanksgiving dinner for a few of his customers who were going to be away from their families.
I thought, well, why should this be? Well, I'm going to do a Thanksgiving dinner here.
Bob's dinner table kept growing, and 5 decades later, so big, it's now at the local mall. But the last 2 years have looked a bit different.
They were advising families not to get together because of, the COVID outbreak. I thought, we're going to go ahead and we'll do a drive-by.
And so today, just like last year, the cars, the families all lining up. Volunteers serving 2,500 pounds of turkey, 3,500 pieces of pie. Tonight, one thankful community, and Bob is thankful too.
People are so happy and gracious and thankful, so rewarding, and people are just so nice.
So much to be grateful.
And again, I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, he's been doing that for 51 years, feeding his community. And again, random acts of kindness. That's what's gonna save us all in the end. But with that being said, guys, that's gonna do it for this podcast. I do thank everybody that liked, that watched, to let people know we were live. I do apologize for technical difficulties. I don't know why. I was looking at the playback as I was watching this, and it's kind of choppy in some areas. I promise I will see what's going on with that and try to fix it to the best of my ability. But again, still thank you for hanging in there and watching. Before I do get out of here, I do want to do some shameless plugging. I keep on saying shameless plugging, but I'm always proud to talk about it. Anyway, I want to talk about my buddy Big BZA Dot, which you can find him, Avon Westwood, on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on socials, where he has a couple of podcasts of his own. The first one, Smoking Trailer Sundays, every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m., in which he shows trailers of movies and video games he finds interesting and therefore wants to share them with you. He also has the REF podcast, which is like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done by World Stars, so only for the grown and intended, every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. He also has a video gaming channel called Making Plays, which can be seen on Facebook, so definitely check him out. Avon Westwood on Facebook, or Big BZA Dot on all socials. Also, I do actually want to bring up another group of brethren that I want to talk about. Ari and Geek present Geek Salad. As you can see, Geek Salad on YouTube, and of course Geek Salad on Facebook. Ari and Geek are actually a good couple guys that I've gotten to know this year. I was actually on their podcast a couple times, and thank you guys for allowing me to share this podcast on your page. They are a couple of blurred brothers that like to talk with other blurs and nerds about everything pop culture and science, and even a few things outside of that. Entertaining as well as informative, but definitely check them out on Facebook as well as YouTube. Geek Salad, as you can see there, you can definitely check them out, like, share, subscribe, and show them love as well. As far as yours truly, guys, link at the bottom. You copy and paste that into your browser. Will take you to my link tree that has the Facebook and YouTube groups for all of my podcasts, How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course the Off Limits podcast. My IG handle, BlackBox447. Definitely like and follow me there, because sometimes I do post reviews of movies and video games, some inspirational stuff, and gym, because I do a couple push-ups. Trust me, this wasn't here. And I like the fact that it's here. But again, I like to be able to sit there and do the things I should have done in my 20s, I'm doing in my 30s now, and just trying to keep myself in shape. But definitely follow me there, because like I said, I do some funny stuff sometimes. I'm funny 2 out of 10 times. I mean, still 2. But With that being said, guys, again, if you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. It is not that hard. If you are, and I say this I stress this very heavily, if you are qualified to get a booster, please go ahead and get one. But above all else, speak to medical personnel, speak to doctors, speak to those who are in the field who can actually tell you what you need to know. Please, I understand the information superhighway is full of people, but it's also full of misinformation. This is why I sit there and say there are people out there that have went to school for this, that have studied this, that are still researching this, that'll be able to give you the information you need to make the informed decision, which I hope is to get vaccinated, because we've seen it through history, vaccinations work. That being said, again, guys, be nice to people. It's not that freaking hard. It's not only being nice, but there's nothing wrong with doing random acts of kindness. If you can do it, great. It doesn't have to be monetary. It doesn't even have to be a gift. Sometimes it's just your time. Sometimes it's just your attention. Sometimes it's just a shoulder that somebody can lean on, or somebody needs to talk to, or need to vent. But simply be kind. It takes very little energy to be kind. It takes a lot of energy to be a dick. That alone should tell you a lot. But the only thing last I'll say about how the Frack got here, it's all about staying informed. We're not trying to change minds, persuade individuals, or we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to do what news stations of old try to do. Give you all the information, allow you to make up your mind for yourself. We do a lot better once we're informed. We're progressive, we move forward, we try to right the wrongs of our history by making decisions now that should have been done way back then. Like electing our first Madam Vice President who is black. Regardless of whether or not you like Kamala Harris, I still hope Michelle Obama and her husband come back. Michelle is president and elects her husband a Supreme Court judge. There's nothing. I'm just saying, when Michelle was in office, I felt a lot better. But that being said, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching the Playback, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys' thoughts are on everything that we covered. Aside from that, guys, please, oh please, enjoy your loved ones this holiday season. Please be safe. Still do all the things we need to do to keep ourselves safe, because when you protect yourselves, you protect each other, and that's all about. That's really all it's about, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll all get through this. Peace.